If you love intense storytelling with unexpected twists, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming next. And as you watch, pay close attention. The smallest detail might mean everything. Let's dive in.
The Florida sun had turned the hotel laundry room into a sauna by noon. Sweat trickled down my spine as I stripped another king-sized bedsheet from the industrial washer, the fabric still steaming hot against my already raw fingers. 6 hours into my shift, and I had another 6 to go. The familiar ache had settled into my lower back, that constant companion that reminded me I was 28 and already feeling 40. Emmeline, table service called. Suite 1804 needs immediate turndown. VIP guest. Rosa's voice cut through the rhythmic thumping of the machines, her thick accent making the English words sound almost melodic. She was the head housekeeper, a woman who'd been at the Oceanus resort longer than most of the furniture. I wiped my forehead with the back of my hand, leaving a damp streak. I'm on laundry rotation today. Can't Maria? Maria called in sick. Again. Rosa's expression said everything about what she thought of Maria's third illness this month. You're the only one I trust with the penthouse suites. These guests. She lowered her voice, glancing around though we were alone. They're important. Greek businessmen. Very particular. Greek businessmen. That meant money. Real money. The kind that left generous tips if you were invisible enough, quick enough, perfect enough. And I needed every dollar I could get. I'll finish this load and head up, I said, already calculating how much I could reasonably add to Aaron's college fund this month. My niece deserved better than the cramped 2-bedroom apartment we shared in Little Havana, better than second-hand uniforms and bargain bin groceries, better than a life shaped by my sister's mistakes and my desperate attempts to fix them. The memory hit me without warning, as it often did. Sarah's voice on the phone, slurred and distant. I can't do this anymore. She's better off with you. Then nothing. 3 years of nothing, except the occasional postcard from whatever city she'd run to, whatever new life she'd tried to start while running from the old one. I shook off the thought and focused on the sheet I was folding. Clean lines, crisp corners, perfect. Everything had to be perfect. 30 minutes later, I pushed my cart toward the elevator reserved for staff, my freshly pressed uniform still somehow managing to look worn despite my best efforts. The Oceanus resort catered to a certain clientele, the kind who flew private, who had people to handle their situations, who moved through the world with the casual certainty of those who'd never had to worry about rent. The elevator climbed smoothly toward the 18th floor, the highest in the building, where the penthouse suites offered private balconies overlooking the Miami coastline. I'd cleaned these rooms 100 times, touched silk sheets worth more than my monthly salary, organized closets full of designer clothes I'd never be able to afford. It should have felt normal by now. It never did. The hallway on the 18th floor was eerily quiet, the thick carpeting muting even the sound of my cartwheels. I checked my watch, 3:47 p.m. The turn-down service wasn't usually requested this early, but Rosa had said they were particular. Rich people and their particular needs. Suite 1804's door was slightly ajar. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the handle. Resort policy was clear. Announce yourself, knock 3 times, wait 30 seconds, knock again. Never enter without confirmation, especially not when the door was already open. But I could hear voices inside. Raised voices. Angry voices. Told you the shipment was delayed. What do you want from me? Blood? The accent was thick. Greek, maybe. The English words wrapped in something ancient and Mediterranean. I want you to do your job, Dimitris. This voice was different, colder, controlled. The kind of voice that didn't need to shout to convey threat. When I say 3 days, I mean 3 days, not a week, not when it's convenient. 3 days. My better judgment screamed at me to back away, to radio Rosa, to let someone else handle whatever was happening behind that door, but I'd already been seen by the security camera down the hall. If I left now, it would be noted. Questioned. And I couldn't afford questions. Couldn't afford anything that might jeopardize this job. I knocked. 3 sharp raps against the doorframe. The voices stopped abruptly. "Housekeeping," I called, keeping my voice professionally cheerful, despite the unease crawling up my spine. "Turn down service." Footsteps approached. The door swung open fully, and I found myself looking at a man who made every instinct in my body simultaneously scream danger and safety in equal, confusing measure. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that spoke of regular workouts and careful attention to physical perfection. Dark hair, almost black, cut short but with just enough length to show a slight wave. His eyes were the color of aged whiskey, a warm amber gold that seemed entirely at odds with the cold assessment in his gaze. He wore a white dress shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with a tattoo I couldn't quite make out. The shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, showing a hint of tanned chest and a gold chain that glinted in the late afternoon light. He looked like money, and Danger had a baby and dressed it in designer clothes. "Turn down service?" His voice was the same controlled one I'd heard through the door. Up close, it had a texture like expensive whiskey and dark chocolate. "It's not even 4 o'clock. "I apologize for the timing, sir. The front desk indicated you requested early turndown." I kept my eyes down, the way Rosa had taught me. "Don't make eye contact with the VIPs. Don't give them any reason to remember you exist." I requested no such thing. He didn't move from the doorway, effectively blocking my entry. Behind him, I could see another man, younger, slightly less polished, pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the ocean. Dimitris, presumably. "I'm sorry for the confusion, sir. I'll inform the front desk of the error." I started to back away, grateful for the excuse to escape. "Wait." I froze. He studied me for a moment, those amber eyes traveling over my face with an intensity that made me feel simultaneously exposed and invisible. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it, because his expression shifted almost imperceptibly. Less cold, marginally less threatening. "You heard us arguing." It wasn't a question. My heart hammered against my ribs. "I heard voices, sir. I didn't hear anything specific. A lie. A necessary lie. The kind I'd learned to tell smoothly after years of surviving in a world that didn't reward honesty, only discretion." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Good. Discretion is valuable." He pulled something from his pocket, his wallet, and extracted several bills. Hundreds. 3 of them. He held them out to me. "For your discretion." I stared at the money. $300. Nearly half my weekly paycheck for doing absolutely nothing except for getting something I technically hadn't heard anyway. "I can't accept that, sir. Resort policy." Another lie. Resort policy actually encouraged accepting tips, as long as they were reported, but $300 for silence felt like something else entirely. His eyebrow raised slightly. "You're refusing money?" "I'm doing my job, sir, which includes discretion. No payment necessary." Something changed in his expression. Interest, perhaps, or surprise. As if I'd just done something unexpected and he wasn't quite sure how to process it. "What's your name?" "Emmeline, sir. Emmeline Silver." "Emmeline." He said it slowly, tasting each syllable. "Greek origin. It means rival or emulating." I blinked, surprised. I didn't know that." Your parents had interesting taste in names." He tucked the money back into his wallet, but pulled out a business card instead. "Philippos Markou. I'm here for the week. If I need anything at all, I want you handling it. Not the front desk. You." I took the card automatically. though every alarm in my head was screaming that this was exactly the kind of attention I didn't want. "Of course, Mr. Marcoux. I'll inform the housekeeping supervisor." "No." His voice was firm. "You specifically. Is that understood?" What was I supposed to say? This man radiated the kind of authority that made no feel dangerous. "Understood, sir." "Good." He stepped back, finally giving me space to enter with my cart. "You can do the turndown now. Dimitris and I are finished with our discussion." The last words were delivered with a pointed look at the younger man, who'd gone very still near the windows. I entered the suite, hyper-aware of both men watching me as I moved through the familiar routine. Fresh towels in the bathroom, mints on the pillows, curtains adjusted just so. The whole time, I could feel Philippos Marcoux's eyes on me, tracking my movements with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Dimitris left while I was working, muttering something in Greek I didn't understand. Philippos responded in the same language, his tone leaving no room for argument. When the door clicked shut, I was alone in the suite with a man who just offered me hush money and made it clear he expected me to be at his personal beck and call. I should have been terrified. Instead, I just felt tired. "You have a child." Again, not a question. How did he know that? I turned to find him standing near the window where Dimitris had been, hands in his pockets, silhouetted against the Miami skyline. "A niece. I'm raising her." "How old?" 8. Why was I answering? Why was I standing here making conversation with a man who was clearly involved in something I wanted no part of? That's a significant responsibility. "She's worth it." He nodded slowly, as if I'd just confirmed something important. "The father?" "Not in the picture. Never was." My voice came out harder than I intended. "Her mother, my sister, left 3 years ago. Erin is mine now." Erin, another Greek name. Peace. I didn't know that either. I finished adjusting the final curtain and turned to face him fully. "Will there be anything else, Mr. Marcoux?" "Yes." He moved closer, and I had to resist the urge to back away. Not threatening exactly, but definitely in my personal space. "I want you to understand something, Emmeline. I value loyalty and discretion above almost everything else. The men I work with, the business I conduct, it requires a level of trust that's rare. Do you understand? I understand you want me to forget what I heard today. I want you to understand that working for me directly, which you are now, whether you planned it or not, comes with certain expectations, but also certain protections." Protections. The word hung between us, loaded with implications I didn't want to examine. "I'm just a housekeeper, Mr. Marcoux." "No." His smile was dangerous. "You're my housekeeper now. And that means something different entirely." I left the suite with his business card burning a hole in my uniform pocket, and the distinct feeling that my life had just taken a turn I hadn't asked for and couldn't reverse. What I didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Philippos Marcoux was already making plans. Plans that involved me. Plans that would change everything. The universe, it seemed, had a twisted sense of humor, because the man who'd just claimed me as his housekeeper was about to become so much more than that. And the little girl waiting for me at home, practicing her math homework and dreaming of a better life, was about to become the reason I'd agree to absolutely anything to keep her safe. 3 days passed before I saw Philippos Marcoux again. 3 days of normal shifts, normal exhaustion, normal worries about Erin's upcoming school supplies, and the electric bill that was 2 weeks overdue. 3 days where I almost convinced myself that the encounter in Suite 1804 had been an aberration, a strange moment that would fade into the background noise of my life. I should have known better. It started small. A note at the front desk when I clocked in. "Mr. Marcoux in Suite 1804 requests Emmeline Silver for all housekeeping services. Signed by Rosa, but clearly dictated by him." Then the second day. A delivery to the housekeeping office. A box addressed to me specifically. Inside, the most expensive work shoes I'd ever seen. Orthopedic, cushioned. The kind that cost $300 retail. The card simply read, "For standing all day. FM." I'd tried to refuse them. Rosa had looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "You don't refuse gifts from guests like Mr. Marcoux, Nina. Especially not practical gifts. He's being considerate." Considerate? That was one word for it. Controlling was another. But my feet had been killing me for months, and the shoes fit perfectly. How did he know my size? And by the end of that second day, I had to admit they made a difference. A significant difference. That was how it started. Small invasions. Thoughtful invasions. The kind that made it harder to draw clear lines between appropriate and concerning. On the third day, everything changed. I was cleaning Suite 1722, 3 floors below Filippos's penthouse, when I heard the shouting. Mr. Castellano, a regular guest who owned a chain of luxury car dealerships, was notorious for his temper. Usually, he directed it at the front desk staff or the restaurant waiters. Today, apparently, his target was one of the young housekeepers. "Are you stupid? I specifically requested hypoallergenic detergent. Specifically." His voice carried through the open doorway, sharp and cruel. "Do you not understand English? Should I speak slower for you?" I abandoned my cart and moved toward the commotion. Maria, the same Maria who'd called in sick 3 days ago, stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face, while Castellano loomed over her, red-faced and still in his bathrobe. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll change the sheets immediately." "You'll be fired, is what you'll be." He was close enough to her that she'd backed against the wall. "Incompetent, lazy, Mr. Castellano." I stepped between them, my voice calm despite my racing heart. "I'm senior housekeeping staff. I apologize for the error. I'll personally handle your room with the appropriate products immediately." His eyes snapped to me, assessing, looking for weakness. "And who are you to interrupt me?" "The person who's going to solve your problem, sir, if you'll allow me to do my job." I kept my expression neutral, professional. Behind me, I could sense Maria slipping away down the hall. Good. She didn't need to be part of this. "Your problem is that you hire idiots who can't follow simple instructions." "Yes, sir. I understand your frustration. If you'll return to your suite, I'll have everything corrected within 30 minutes. He stared at me for a long moment, clearly debating whether to continue his tirade. Finally, he waved dismissively and stormed back into his room, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the nearby artwork. I released a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. My hands were shaking. "That was brave." The voice came from behind me, accented and familiar, or stupid. I haven't decided which yet. I turned to find Filippos leaning against the wall near the elevator, arms crossed, watching me with those amber eyes. He wore a charcoal suit today, perfectly tailored, with a burgundy tie that probably cost more than my car. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine about men who ruled empires. "Just doing my job, Mr. Marcoux. Your job is to clean rooms, not to position yourself between an angry man and a defenseless girl." He pushed off the wall and approached, each step measured and deliberate. That could have gone very badly. She was crying. He was screaming. Someone needed to intervene. And you decided that someone should be you. He stopped close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something expensive and woody that probably had an Italian name I couldn't pronounce. "Do you make a habit of protecting the vulnerable, Emmeline?" The way he said my name made something flutter in my chest. I pushed the feeling away, when necessary. "Interesting." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then pocketed it again. "Mr. Castellano won't be a problem anymore." I blinked. "What?" He won't be bothering you or any other staff member. Consider it handled. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. You just need to trust that I keep my word about protections. His eyes held mine. You work for me now, remember? That means you're under my protection. And that extends to preventing harassment from guests who don't know how to treat service staff with respect. Something cold slithered down my spine. What did you do? Made a phone call. Had a conversation. Mr. Castellano understands now that certain behaviors have consequences. He said it so casually, as if he hadn't just implied something that sounded distinctly like a threat. Now, about your niece. My blood turned to ice. What about Erin? She's at Riverside Elementary, correct? 3rd grade, Mrs. Martinez's class. Talented artist, struggles slightly with math but excels at reading comprehension. He recited the information like he was reading from a file, which I realized with growing horror he probably was. You investigated me. My voice came out flat, dangerous. I investigate everyone who enters my sphere of influence. It's good practice. Prevents surprises. He tilted his head slightly. Your apartment is in Little Havana. 2 bedrooms, outdated plumbing, and a landlord who should be reported for code violations. Your rent is 7 weeks overdue, and you've been negotiating payment plans while working double shifts to cover the deficit. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the violation of having this stranger, this dangerous, powerful stranger, dissect my entire life and lay it bare. How dare you? I dare, because I need to know who I'm trusting. His expression was unreadable. And because I'm about to make you an offer you can't refuse, and I need you to understand exactly how serious I am. I don't want anything from you. Yes, you do. You want your niece safe. You want her fed, clothed, educated properly. You want her to have opportunities you never had. You want to stop waking up at 3 a.m. doing the math on whether you can afford both electricity and groceries. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. You want someone to share the burden you've been carrying alone for 3 years. And I'm offering to be that someone. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Why would you possibly care about a housekeeper and her niece? Because loyalty is rare and valuable. Because you refused $300 rather than compromise your principles. Because you stepped between an angry man and a scared girl without hesitation. He paused. And because I need a wife. The world tilted sideways. Excuse me? I need a wife. You need protection and financial security. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. He said it like he was proposing a business merger, not a marriage. Before you refuse, let me outline the terms. Are you insane? I found my voice, though it came out higher than normal. You don't even know me. I know enough. I know you're loyal, protective, and principled. I know you put your niece's needs above your own comfort. I know you don't scare easily, and you don't compromise your values even when offered easy money. His eyes held mine. That's more than most marriages are built on. This is crazy. You're crazy. I'm not marrying a stranger. Not today, obviously. We'll need time to arrange things properly. But think about it, Emmeline. Think about what I'm offering. He pulled out another business card. Why did he carry so many? And pressed it into my hand. My personal number. Call me when you're ready to discuss terms. I'm not going to call you. I'm not going to marry you. This conversation never happened. He smiled, and for the first time, it looked almost genuine. We'll see. Oh, and Emmeline, your rent has been paid. 6 months in advance. The landlord has also been informed that any future violations of housing codes will result in significant legal consequences. You can't just, I can, I did. Consider it a gesture of good faith. He checked his watch. I have a meeting. We'll talk again soon. He was gone before I could formulate a response, disappearing into the elevator with that same controlled grace that made him seem simultaneously predatory and protective. I stood in that hallway for a full 5 minutes, staring at the business card in my hand. Filipos Marcou. The name was printed in elegant script, along with a phone number and a single line of text. Marcou Enterprises, import-export, import-export. Right. And I was the Queen of England. That night, I sat at our tiny kitchen table while Erin did her homework, trying to process what had happened. Trying to understand why a man who clearly operated outside the law would want to marry someone like me. Trying to figure out if I was terrified or relieved that someone, anyone, had offered to help carry the weight I'd been shouldering alone. Aunt Emmy? Erin's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Are you okay? You look sad. I forced a smile. Just tired, sweetheart. How's the math homework? Hard. She pushed the paper toward me, her small face scrunched in concentration. I don't understand fractions. I pulled her onto my lap, breathing in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Let me help. We'll figure it out together. We always figure it out together, she said, her voice absolutely certain. That's what you tell me. We're a team. We're a team, I agreed, my heart clenching. But as I helped her work through the problems, part of my mind kept circling back to Filipos Marcou's offer. To the rent paid 6 months in advance, to the knowledge that someone had noticed I was drowning and had thrown me a lifeline. Even if that lifeline came with strings attached. Even if those strings might strangle me. I didn't call him that night. Or the next night. Or the night after that. But I kept the business card, tucked into my wallet, right next to the picture of Erin on her first day of school. Just in case. Because deep down, I already knew what I didn't want to admit. When someone offers you salvation while you're drowning, you don't ask too many questions about the cost. You just grab hold and pray you survive what comes next. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was elbow-deep in soapy water, scrubbing dishes from Erin's breakfast. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer anyway. Ms. Silver? This is Detective Morrison with Miami PD. We need you to come to the station to answer some questions regarding Mr. Harold Whitmore. My hands went numb. Harold Whitmore. The elderly guest from the penthouse suite. The kind man who always requested me specifically. Who tipped generously and treated the staff like humans instead of furniture. The man who died in his sleep 3 nights ago. Questions about what? We'd prefer to discuss this in person, ma'am. Can you come in today? I looked at the clock. My shift started in 2 hours. I need to drop my niece at school first. That's fine. We'll expect you at 10. The line went dead. My first call was to Rosa, explaining I'd be late. My second call, made with shaking fingers, was to the number on the business card I'd been carrying for 6 days. Filipos answered on the first ring. Emmeline, how did you know it was me? I've been waiting for you to call. There was satisfaction in his voice. What do you need? The police want to question me about a guest who died, Harold Whitmore. I don't understand why. Don't say anything else. Not on this line. His voice sharpened. Where are you? Home. Stay there. I'm sending someone to pick you up. Don't talk to the police without representation. Do you understand? I can't afford a lawyer. You don't need to afford anything. Just wait. My attorney will meet you at the station. He paused. Emmeline, this is important. Do not speak to them alone. Promise me. I promise. 20 minutes later, a black Mercedes pulled up to my building. The driver was Dimitris, the young man from that first day in Filipos's suite. He didn't speak during the ride to the police station, but he handed me a business card for Alexander Stavros, Eskians, with an address that put his office in one of Miami's most expensive districts. The attorney was waiting when we arrived, a man in his 50s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of calm authority that came from winning battles in courtrooms. He greeted me with a firm handshake and immediately took control. "Don't answer anything without consulting me first," he said as we entered the building. "If they push, I'll end the interview. Clear?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. Detective Morrison was a tired-looking man with a coffee stain on his tie. He led us to a sterile interview room and laid out his cards immediately. Harold Whitmore's son was claiming I'd stolen money from his father. $1 million, to be precise. Money that had supposedly been in a suitcase that disappeared after Harold's death. "That's absurd," I said, looking at Stavros for permission. He nodded slightly. "Mr. Whitmore was a guest. I cleaned his room, that's all. His son claims you had unusual access to his father, that you spent time with him beyond normal housekeeping duties. Mr. Whitmore was lonely. His son barely visited. Sometimes he'd want company while I cleaned. We'd talk. That's not a crime." Morrison slid a photograph across the table. It showed Harold Whitmore handing me something, a manila envelope. This was taken by hotel security 2 weeks before his death. "What's in the envelope?" I remembered that day. Harold pressing the envelope into my hands, his papery skin warm, his eyes bright with something like mischief. "Open it later," he'd said, "when you need it most." I'd opened it in the parking lot. Inside was $5,000 in cash and a note. "For the girl. Education fund. You're a good mother to her." "A gift," I said carefully. He knew I was raising my niece. He wanted to help with her education. $5,000 is quite a gift. Mr. Whitmore was generous. "And the $1 million? I don't know anything about $1 million. The interview lasted 2 hours. They showed me bank statements, questioned my finances, implied that I'd somehow manipulated a dying man. Through it all, Stavros remained a wall between me and their accusations, deflecting, objecting, making it clear that speculation wasn't evidence. Finally, Morrison leaned back. "We're pursuing this, Ms. Silver. If we find any connection between you and that missing money, you'll be charged with elder abuse and theft. That's serious prison time." "My client has been nothing but cooperative," Stavros said smoothly. "And you have nothing but the accusations of a son who, by his own admission, barely knew his father's affairs. If you had real evidence, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Outside, I collapsed against the building's exterior wall, my legs suddenly unreliable. Stavros stood beside me, perfectly composed. "This won't go away quickly," he said. "The son is convinced you're involved. He's likely to make noise, create problems. Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" "Safe from what?" "From attention you don't want. From people asking questions. From complications." He handed me another card. "This is Mr. Marco's private line. He asked me to tell you that his offer still stands, and that, given the circumstances, you might want to reconsider." "What offer?" But I already knew. "He'll explain." "But Ms. Silver?" "Whatever he's proposed, I'd seriously consider it. Men like Harold Whitmore's son don't let go easily, and they have resources to make your life very difficult." That evening, I finally made the call. Philippos answered immediately. "Are you safe?" "I'm home. Your lawyer got me out of there without charges. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We need to talk. In person. Can you get someone to watch Aaron tonight?" "My neighbor can." "Why?" "Because what I'm about to propose requires your full attention, and I'd prefer to have this conversation face to face." He paused. "I'm sending a car at 8. Don't argue." The line went dead before I could respond. Mrs. Chen from 3B agreed to watch Aaron, accepting my rushed explanation about a work emergency. I changed out of my housekeeping uniform into the nicest dress I owned, a simple navy blue sheath that I'd bought for my sister's wedding years ago. It felt inadequate somehow, like showing up to a boardroom meeting in pajamas. The car arrived precisely at 8. Dimitri's again, still silent, but less intimidating now. He drove me to a restaurant I'd only seen from the outside. Poseidon, an exclusive Greek establishment where reservations were booked months in advance. Philippos was waiting in a private room at the back, away from the main dining area. He stood when I entered, and I was struck again by how his presence seemed to fill whatever space he occupied. Tonight, he wore a black suit with a charcoal shirt, no tie, the top button undone. He looked dangerous and expensive, and entirely too handsome for my peace of mind. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Have you eaten?" "I'm not hungry." "You will be. The food here is exceptional." He poured wine into my glass despite my protest. "First, let's address the situation with Whitmore's son. He's going to continue pushing this investigation. He believes his father was manipulated, and he's determined to find someone to blame. I didn't take anything from Harold. He gave me that money for Aaron's education. That's all." "I believe you. But belief doesn't matter in situations like this. What matters is evidence, narrative, and power. Whitmore's son has the first two. I have the third." He leaned back, studying me. "Which brings us to my proposal. Marriage." The word felt foreign on my tongue. "A contract marriage, to be precise. Mutually beneficial. You get protection from Whitmore's accusations, financial security for yourself and Aaron, and the backing of my name and resources. I get a wife, which I need for business reasons that I won't bore you with tonight. Business reasons. My world, the world I operate in, values family, tradition, stability. A man without family is viewed as unreliable, ungrounded. I need to appear settled, committed. A wife provides that appearance. So I'd be a prop in your business dealings." His eyes flashed. "You'd be my wife. There's a significant difference. You'd have my protection, my loyalty, and my commitment to your well-being and Aaron's. In return, I'd expect the same. Except you'd actually be faithful, and I'd just be pretending to love you." "I would be faithful," he said. And something in his voice made me believe him. When I make a vow, I keep it. As for love, he shrugged. "Love is overrated. Respect, loyalty, mutual benefit, those things last. Love fades. That's cynical. That's experience." He poured more wine. "I was engaged once, 6 years ago. She was beautiful, from a good family, exactly what everyone expected me to marry. I thought I loved her. Turned out she was gathering information for a rival organization. Nearly got my brothers killed." The casual way he said it, rival organization, brothers killed, reminded me exactly what kind of man I was dealing with. "What happened to her?" "She's no longer a problem." His tone made it clear that was all he'd say on the subject. "The point is, I learned that emotions are liabilities, contracts are clear, expectations are defined, no surprises." "And what exactly would you expect from me in this contract?" "Public appearance as my wife, attendance at certain events, discretion about my business affairs, and..." He paused, something shifting in his expression. "I'd expect you to eventually give me children, heirs, but that's negotiable in terms of timing." My face flushed. "You want me to have your children?" "I'm Greek. Family is everything. Legacy is everything. But I'm not unreasonable. We discuss timing, ensure you're comfortable, make arrangements for Aaron's continued well-being." He leaned forward. "I'm offering you the world, Emmeline. Security, protection, opportunities you've never had. All I'm asking in return is loyalty and the appearance of a committed marriage. For how long? Minimum 5 years. After that, we can renegotiate if needed. But I suspect once you're accustomed to this life, you won't want to leave." It wasn't arrogance in his voice, just certainty. Food arrived. Small plates of food I couldn't name, each one more beautiful than the last. Filipos urged me to eat, and I found myself complying, too overwhelmed to argue. The food was incredible, each bite a revelation. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "You have until Friday. Whitmore's son is planning to file formal charges then. Once that happens, everything becomes more complicated. But if you're married to me, if you have my name and protection, those charges will disappear. I guarantee it." "How can you possibly guarantee that?" His smile was cold. "Because I have resources you can't imagine. And because men like Whitmore's son understand power dynamics very well. Once you're a Marcoux, you're untouchable." He drove me home himself, in a car that probably cost more than I'd make in 10 years. We didn't speak during the drive, but the silence felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. At my building, he walked me to my door despite my protests. "Think about it," he said, standing too close in the dim hallway. "Think about Aaron growing up safe, educated, with every opportunity. Think about never worrying about rent or food or whether you can afford her medical care. Think about what I'm offering, Emmeline, and think about what happens if you refuse." That last line sent ice through my veins. Is that a threat? It's reality. Whitmore's son won't stop. The investigation will continue. Your life will be scrutinized, and I won't always be able to help if you're not under my protection. He touched my face, his fingers gentle despite the hardness in his eyes. "I want you to choose this freely, but I also want you to understand what you're choosing between. Safety or struggle, protection or prosecution, me or the alternatives." He left before I could respond. Inside, Aaron was asleep on the couch, Mrs. Chen dozing in the armchair. I paid her and locked the door behind her, then stood in my dark apartment, looking at my niece's peaceful face. What was I willing to do to keep her safe? To give her the life she deserved? The answer, I was beginning to realize, was absolutely anything. Even marry a man I barely knew. A dangerous man. A man who operated in shadows and spoke of threats as casually as other people discussed the weather. Even that. Because love wasn't always romantic or chosen. Sometimes love was a 8-year-old girl who called you Aunt Emmy and trusted you to keep her world stable. And for that kind of love, you'd walk into any darkness, make any deal, marry any devil. I picked up my phone and sent a text to the number on Filipos's card. "Friday. I'll give you my answer Friday." His response came immediately. "I already know what your answer will be. I'll make the arrangements." Arrogant, presumptuous, absolutely certain of his power over my situation, and completely, terrifyingly right. Friday came with a phone call at 6 a.m. Filipos's voice, calm and controlled, giving me an address and a time. "Noon. Bring Aaron. We need to discuss arrangements, and she should be part of this conversation. She's 8. You want to discuss marriage contracts with an 8-year-old? I want her to meet me, to understand that this arrangement includes her well-being. She's not an afterthought, Emmeline. She's central to why you're considering this." He paused. "And I want to meet the person you've built your life around. It matters." So at 11:30, I found myself in a taxi with Aaron, heading toward an address in Coral Gables that turned out to be a private estate, hidden behind iron gates and palm trees. The house was massive, white stone and glass, with a circular driveway and a fountain that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. "Wow," Aaron breathed, her eyes wide. "Aunt Emmy, who lives here?" "A man I work for. He wants to meet you." Not quite the truth, but how did you explain contract marriages to a child? Filipos answered the door himself, dressed casually in dark jeans and a white linen shirt that made his olive skin seem to glow. His eyes went immediately to Aaron, and something in his expression softened. "You must be Aaron. I'm Filipos." He crouched down to her level, bringing himself to eye height. Your aunt has told me a lot about you." "She has?" Aaron looked at me confused. "I told him you're very smart and that you love to draw," I said quickly. "I do love to draw." Aaron's natural enthusiasm overrode her shyness. "I'm working on a series about ocean animals right now. Do you want to see?" "I'd love to. But first, I have something for you." He led us inside to a living room that looked like something from a magazine. All white furniture and modern art. On the coffee table was a box wrapped in silver paper. "I heard you might need new art supplies for school." Aaron looked at me for permission. I nodded, and she tore into the paper with the enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster. Inside was a professional art set: pencils, markers, watercolors, papers in different textures and sizes. The kind of supplies I'd looked at in stores but could never justify buying. "This is amazing." Aaron threw her arms around Filipos without hesitation, and I saw him freeze for just a moment before carefully returning the hug. When he looked up at me over her head, something in his eyes had changed. "Why don't you explore the art supplies while your aunt and I talk?" he suggested to Aaron. "There's a sunroom through there with better light. You could draw something if you'd like." Once Aaron was settled in the sunroom, visible through glass doors but out of earshot, Filipos gestured for me to sit. "She's remarkable," he said simply. "Smart, affectionate, trusting. You've raised her well." "I've done my best." "Your best is better than most people's everything." He sat across from me, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. "So, have you decided?" I'd barely slept in 3 days, weighing options that all seemed impossible. But this morning, I'd received a certified letter. Formal notice that Whitmore's son was pursuing criminal charges: theft, elder abuse, fraud. My court date was set for 3 weeks out. "Yes," I said quietly. "I'll marry you." He didn't smile or gloat, just nodded as if confirming something he'd already known. "Good. There are terms we need to discuss." He laid it out methodically. The wedding would be in 2 weeks. Quick, but not suspiciously so. I'd move into this house immediately after with Aaron. A private school had already been contacted about enrollment for her. I'd have access to accounts, credit cards, whatever I needed. In public, we'd present as a devoted couple. In private, I'd have my own suite of rooms until I was comfortable with more. "More meaning what?" I asked, though I knew. "Meaning the physical aspects of marriage. I told you I want children eventually, but I'm not going to force anything, Emmeline. When you're ready, you'll come to me. Until then, we'll maintain separate bedrooms." How generous. The words came out sharper than I intended. His eyes flashed. "It is generous. Many men in my position wouldn't give you the choice. But I don't want a wife who flinches when I touch her. I want someone who comes to me willingly. I'm willing to wait for that." "And if I never come to you willingly?" "You will." Again, that absolute certainty. Because despite what you think, there's attraction between us. You feel it. I feel it. And once you're no longer exhausted and terrified, once you're settled and safe, you'll acknowledge it. He wasn't wrong. I hated that he wasn't wrong. There was something magnetic about Filipos Marcoux, something that made my pulse quicken when he stood too close, or looked at me with those amber eyes. "What about love?" I asked. "You said love doesn't matter. But what if I want it someday? What if this arrangement isn't enough?" "Then we'll deal with that when it comes. But Emmeline, I've seen more marriages built on love crumble than ones built on mutual respect and clear expectations. What I'm offering you is honest. No false promises, no romantic delusions. Just partnership. A business partnership. A life partnership. There's a difference." He stood and pulled an envelope from a drawer in the side table. "This is the contract. Read it carefully. My attorney will review it with you if you'd like. If there's anything you want changed, we'll negotiate. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. When do I need to give final approval? Monday. The wedding is planned for 2 weeks from tomorrow. Small ceremony, immediate family only on my side, whoever you want on yours. I don't have anyone. Something in his expression softened again. Then it will be my family and Aaron. That's enough. Aaron emerged from the sunroom with a drawing, a remarkably good sketch of the fountain we'd seen outside. She presented it to Filipos with a shy smile. For you. To say thank you for the art supplies. He took it with surprising reverence, studying it carefully. This is exceptional, Aaron. You have real talent. He crouched down again to her level. I'm going to frame this and put it in my office. Would that be okay? She nodded enthusiastically, and I felt something crack in my chest. This dangerous man, this criminal who operated in shadows, was being so gentle with my niece that I almost couldn't reconcile the two versions of him. On the drive home, in a car Filipos insisted on providing rather than letting us take a taxi, Aaron chattered about the house, the art supplies, how nice Mr. Filipos was. Do you work for him now? She asked. Is that why we went there? Something like that, I hedged. I like him. He's nice. And he really looked at my drawing, not just pretended to like it. That's how you know when adults really care. That night, after Aaron was asleep, I opened the contract. It was 30 pages long, written in language I only partially understood. But certain clauses stood out. Party A, Filipos Marcu, agrees to provide complete financial support for Party B, Emmeline Silver, and her dependent, Aaron Silver, including but not limited to housing, education, medical care, and general living expenses. Party B agrees to maintain public appearance as Party A's devoted spouse, attend designated events, and uphold the reputation of the Marcu family name. Both parties agree to maintain discretion regarding the contractual nature of this marriage. Public presentation will suggest a traditional romantic marriage. Physical intimacy is encouraged but not required. Both parties must consent to any intimate relations. In the event of pregnancy, Party A agrees to provide full medical care and support. Any children born of this union will be considered legitimate heirs to the Marcu estate. This contract may be terminated after 5 years with mutual agreement, or earlier under specific circumstances outlined in Section 12. I read it 3 times, looking for the trap, the clause that would give him complete control, the fine print that would steal my autonomy. But it was, surprisingly, fair, generous even. Everything he'd promised, written in legal language. I thought about Whitmore's son and his accusations, about the electric bill sitting on my counter, about Aaron's school shoes that were getting too small, about the constant weight of being one emergency away from complete disaster. And I thought about Filipos's hands, gentle on Aaron's shoulders as he'd admired her drawing, about the way he'd crouched down to her level, made himself smaller, less intimidating, about the art supplies that said he'd actually listened when I'd mentioned her interests. Maybe this could work. Maybe a marriage built on honesty and mutual need was better than one built on lies and false romance. Maybe I could do this. Monday morning, I called the number on the contract. Filipos answered immediately. I'll sign it, I said, but I have one addition I want. Name it. If anything happens to me, anything at all, Aaron stays with you. You become her legal guardian. I want that in writing. Silence. Then, you're asking me to be responsible for her. I'm asking you to promise that she'll be protected no matter what. That even if I'm gone, she'll have what she needs. More silence. Finally. Agreed. I'll have the addendum drafted today. Emmeline? Yes? You're trusting me with something precious. I won't forget that. The line went dead. 2 weeks later, I stood in a private chapel wearing a dress I hadn't chosen. Silk, elegant, perfectly fitted because Filipos had somehow gotten my measurements. Erin sat in the front row, beaming in her own new dress. Filipos's brothers flanked him at the altar, and a small group of people I didn't know filled the other pews. When the officiant asked if I took Filipos Marcou to be my husband, I looked at this stranger I was binding myself to and thought about all the ways this could go wrong. Then I looked at Erin's hopeful face and thought about all the ways it might go right. "I do," I said. And just like that, I became Mrs. Filipos Marcou. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that in 4 weeks, I'd discover I was pregnant. And everything I thought I understood about this arrangement would shatter completely. The nausea started 3 weeks after the wedding. I'd attributed it to stress, adjusting to the massive house, to Filipos's family who regarded me with polite skepticism, to the constant awareness that I was living a lie dressed up as marriage. But when the nausea persisted, when my period failed to arrive, I bought a test from a pharmacy across town where no one knew me. Positive. I stared at those 2 pink lines and felt my carefully constructed world tilt on its axis. We'd been careful. The few times we'd been intimate, because despite his promise to wait, the attraction between us had proved impossible to ignore. We'd used protection. But apparently, the universe had decided that a contract marriage needed a complication. I told Filipos that night in his study, where he was reviewing documents that I'd learned not to ask about. He looked up when I entered, and something in my expression made him set down his papers immediately. "What's wrong?" "I'm pregnant." The words hung between us, heavy and impossible. I watched him process, saw a dozen emotions flicker across his face too quickly to name. "How far along?" "Maybe 3 weeks. I just took the test today. I haven't seen a doctor yet." He stood, moved toward me, then stopped as if uncertain whether he was allowed to touch me. "How do you feel about this?" The question surprised me. "I don't know. Terrified. Confused. This wasn't part of the plan. Plans change." He came closer, his hand hovering near my stomach before dropping to his side. "Emmeline, I told you I wanted children eventually. This is sooner than I expected, but what? This makes everything real. This isn't a contract anymore, Filipos. This is a child, your heir." I sank into the chair across from his desk. How do I explain this to Erin? She already thinks this marriage is some fairy tale romance. Now I'm pregnant? What do I tell her? The truth. That we're married and we're having a baby. She doesn't need to know the rest. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. "Listen to me. This child will be protected, cherished, given everything. And you'll have the best medical care, anything you need. And that's not what I'm worried about." Then what? I looked at this man I'd married, the stranger who was becoming familiar in ways that terrified me. "I'm worried that I'm starting to care about you, that this isn't just a contract for me anymore. And I'm worried that when you realize that, you'll use it against me." His hands tightened on mine. "I would never. You don't know that. You said emotions are liabilities. What happens when I become an emotional liability?" "You won't." His voice was fierce. "Emmeline, I'm not going to hurt you. Not intentionally. Whatever this marriage started as, it's becoming something else. Can you not feel that?" I could. That was the problem. Every day in this house, every dinner where he asked about my day, every moment he spent with Erin teaching her chess or discussing her drawings, it was all dismantling my defenses. I was falling for my contract husband, and it was the most dangerous thing I could possibly do. "I need to call Dr. Papadakis," I said, pulling my hands from his. "Schedule an appointment. I'll come with you." "That's not necessary. I'm coming with you." Not a request. "This is my child too, Emmeline. I want to be part of everything." The appointment was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Dr. Elena Papadakis was a cheerful woman in her 50s who'd been Filipos's family physician for years. She confirmed what the test had told me. Approximately 4 weeks pregnant, due late spring. "Everything looks good," she said, reviewing the ultrasound. "Healthy heartbeat, normal development." She paused, glancing between us. "I'm happy for you both. Filipos, your mother will be thrilled." Filipos's mother. I'd met her once at the wedding. Katerina Marcu was a formidable woman who'd made it clear through every polite word and cold smile that she found me inadequate for her eldest son. The news of a pregnancy would either soften her or confirm her suspicions that I'd trapped him. "We'll tell her this weekend," Filipos said, his hand finding mine as we looked at the ultrasound screen. That tiny heartbeat, that possibility of a person, made something in my chest constrict. That night, we told Erin over dinner. She stared at us, fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "A baby? Really? I'm going to be a cousin?" "More than that," Filipos said gently. "You'll be a big sister to this baby. You're part of our family, Erin. Completely." She launched herself at both of us, hugging us with the enthusiasm that made her presence in my life such a gift. "This is the best news ever. Can we paint the nursery? Can I help pick out names? When is it coming?" Her joy was uncomplicated, pure. For her, this was simply the natural progression of what she believed was a love story. She had no idea that the man I'd married was dangerous, that our marriage was built on necessity, that everything about our situation was complicated. And watching Filipos with her, seeing how he smiled at her excitement, how he answered her 1,000 questions with patience, I realized I wanted to protect that innocence for as long as possible. The news spread through Filipos's world quickly. His brothers congratulated me with genuine warmth. His business associates sent gifts, and his mother arrived at our house 3 days after we told her, her face an interesting mix of disapproval and obligation. "Well," Katerina said, settling into the living room like she owned it. "This is unexpected." "Life is full of surprises," Filipos replied coolly. "Indeed." She turned to me, her dark eyes assessing. "You're feeling well? No complications?" "The doctor says everything is normal." "Good. The Marcu line must continue strong." She paused, sipping the tea that had been brought to her. "You understand what this means, don't you? This child will be groomed from birth to take over the family business eventually. There are expectations, traditions that must be honored." "Mother." Filipos's voice held warning. "I'm simply stating facts, Filipos. Your wife should understand what world her child will inherit." She looked at me again. "Can you handle that, Emmeline? Can you raise a child in our world without flinching?" "I can handle anything required to keep my family safe," I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Something flickered in her expression. Maybe respect, maybe just acknowledgement. "We'll see. The first test is always the hardest." She left shortly after, and I turned to Filipos. What did she mean by that? The first test? Ignore her. She's difficult with everyone. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Katerina knew something I didn't. That there was a test coming, a challenge that would determine whether I truly belonged in this world. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 weeks later, the news broke. Harold Whitmore's will had been read. He'd left me $1 million, formally and legally, with a handwritten note explaining that I'd been kind when his own family hadn't, that I'd treated him with dignity, that he wanted to ensure Erin had educational opportunities. Whitmore's son went ballistic, filed lawsuits claiming undue influence, manipulation, elder abuse. The story hit the local news. Wealthy widow leaves fortune to hotel housekeeper. The implications were clear. I'd seduced, manipulated, or coerced a dying man. "This is bad," I said to Filipos, watching the news coverage. "They're going to crucify me." "No, they won't." His voice was ice cold. "Because you're a Marcu now, and we protect our own. What followed was a masterclass in power. Filippos's attorneys filed countersuits. Private investigators uncovered that Whitmore's son had been stealing from his father for years. Witnesses came forward, hotel staff who'd seen the son's neglect, who could testify to my appropriate behavior. The narrative shifted. Grieving son lashes out at innocent housekeeper who was simply kind to his father. Within a month, the son dropped all charges. The will was upheld. And I had $1 million I'd never asked for. I want to give it away, I told Filippos. To charity. I don't want money that's causing this much trouble. No, he was adamant. That money is yours. Harold Whitmore wanted you to have it. Giving it away looks like guilt. Keep it. Put it in a trust for Aaron if you don't want to touch it yourself. But it's yours. Your mother is going to think I'm a gold digger now. My mother's opinion is irrelevant. He pulled me close, his hand resting on my stomach where our child was growing. What matters is that you're safe, our child is safe, and Aaron is secure. Everything else is noise. But the noise didn't stop. Rumors circulated through Filippos's world. Whispers about the housekeeper who'd married the boss, who'd gotten pregnant suspiciously quickly, who'd inherited money from a dead man. Some people smiled to my face and sneered behind my back. The only place I felt completely safe was with Erin. In the quiet moments when she'd curl up beside me and talk about the baby, about what she hoped it would be like to have a sibling. I'll protect them, she told me seriously one night. Just like you protect me. That's what families do. We take care of each other. We take care of each other, I agreed, my heart breaking with love for this child who'd already been through too much. I didn't know that Filippos was listening from the doorway. Didn't know that those simple words, we take care of each other, would change everything. Because a man who'd built his life on control and power had just heard the definition of family from an 8-year-old girl. And it would make him realize exactly what he'd been missing his entire life. The call came at 2 a.m. I jolted awake to find Filippos already up, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Greek. His face was stone, but I'd learned to read the subtle signs of his anger, the tightness around his eyes, the controlled stillness of his body. When he ended the call, he stood there for a moment before turning to me. Get dressed, quickly. We need to move you and Aaron. What's happening? Whitmore's son has hired people, professionals. They're making threats. He was already pulling clothes from the closet. My security team is moving you to a safe house until this is resolved. My fear crystallized in my chest. Is Aaron? She's being woken now. Elena is with her. Elena was one of the household staff, the one Aaron had bonded with most. Pack nothing. Everything you need will be there. 30 minutes later, we were in an armored SUV heading somewhere I didn't recognize. Aaron was pressed against my side, sleepy and confused. Filippos sat across from us, phone in hand, issuing orders in Greek and English. The safe house was a compound outside the city, protected by high walls and armed guards. It should have felt like a prison. Instead, it felt like the first time I truly understood the world I'd married into. How long do we have to stay here? Aaron asked, looking around the unfamiliar space. Not long, Filippos promised, crouching to her level. Just until I make sure everyone understands that threatening my family has consequences. What kind of consequences? He glanced at me, then back to Aaron. The kind that ensure it never happens again. After Aaron was settled in bed, I found Filippos in the secure office, surrounded by his brothers and several men I recognized as his inner circle. She shouldn't be here, one of them said in Greek, not realizing I'd picked up enough of the language to understand. She's my wife, Filippos replied in English, his eyes meeting mine. She has every right to know what we're dealing with, he explained. Whitmore's son had made connections with a rival organization, offering information about the Marcoux family in exchange for help. dealing with me. The threat was real, professional, and immediate. "What do you want me to do?" I asked. "Stay here. Stay safe. Let me handle this." He stood, moving toward me. "Emmeline, I need you to understand something. The people making these threats, they're dangerous, but they're also making a fundamental error in judgment." "What error?" "They think you're a weakness, a vulnerability they can exploit to get to me." His hand came up to cradle my face. "They don't understand that you're not my weakness. You're my strength. And threatening you, threatening our child, threatening Aaron, that's not attacking my vulnerability. That's declaring war." The cold certainty in his voice should have frightened me. Instead, I felt something else. Safe. Protected. Certain that whatever was coming, Filipos Marcoux would handle it. He left that night, kissing me with an intensity that felt like a promise and a goodbye. His brothers went with him, and the compound went into lockdown. 3 days passed. Aaron and I fell into a strange routine. Reading, drawing, talking about the baby. Elena kept us company, never letting on that anything was wrong. But I could see the guards, hear the occasional updates being given to the security chief. On the 4th day, Filipos returned. He looked exhausted, a shadow of stubble darkening his jaw, his clothes slightly rumpled. But his eyes found mine immediately when he entered, and something in them had changed. "It's over," he said simply. "Whitmore's son is no longer a problem. The people he hired have been convinced to take contracts elsewhere, and the rival organization has been reminded why no one threatens the Marcoux family." "What does that mean? Convinced? Reminded?" "It means you can come home. You and Aaron are safe now. Completely safe." That night, after Aaron was asleep in her own bed back at the house, I found Filipos in his study. He was standing at the window, looking out over the grounds, and he didn't turn when I entered. "I need to know," I said. "What did you do?" "What needed to be done?" "That's not an answer." He turned then, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain. "You want specifics? You want to know exactly what I'm capable of when someone threatens my family?" "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Whitmore's son is alive. Scared, financially devastated, legally compromised enough that he'll never risk pursuing you again, but alive. The men he hired have been paid more than he offered them to leave the country. The rival organization lost 2 significant assets and learned that the cost of coming after a Marcoux is higher than any potential reward." "Assets? You mean people?" "I mean people who made choices that had consequences." His voice hardened. "I won't apologize for protecting you, Emmeline. I won't pretend to be something I'm not. This is who I am. This is what I do. If that's too much for you, it's not." He blinked, surprised. "What?" "It's not too much. Because you did it for Aaron. For our baby. For me." I moved closer. "I'm not naive anymore, Filipos. I understand your world now. I understand what being your wife means. And I'm choosing it. Fully. Not because of a contract or financial security, but because despite everything, despite the danger and the darkness and the moral ambiguity, I love you." The words hung between us, impossible and true. "You don't mean that," he said, but his voice was rough. "I do. I've been falling in love with you since you gave Aaron those art supplies. Since you made sure she felt included in our wedding. Since you came to every doctor's appointment for this baby. Since you looked at me like I was precious instead of convenient." I touched his face. "You're a criminal and a killer, and probably going to hell. But you're also the man who checks on Erin's nightmares and asks about her drawings and promises to teach our son or daughter to be strong. So yes, I love you. Even knowing everything. Maybe because I know everything. He kissed me then, fierce and desperate, and when we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, but you have me anyway. I love you too. The words sounded like they'd been torn from somewhere deep. I didn't expect to. Didn't want to. But you and Aaron, you've made me want things I thought I'd never have. A real family. A home that's more than just a house. Someone to build something good with. Even in the middle of all this darkness. 3 months later, our son was born. Alexandros Philippos Markou came into the world at dawn, screaming his displeasure at being evicted from his comfortable home. Philippos held him with the same careful reverence he'd shown Aaron's first drawing, and I watched a hardened criminal dissolve into a man overcome with love. He's perfect, he breathed. He's perfect, and he's ours. Aaron visited the hospital that afternoon, bringing a drawing she'd made of the three of us, her, me, and Philippos, with a tiny addition in a cradle. For Alexandros's room, she explained, so he knows he has a family who loves him. Katerina Markou came the next day, took one look at her grandson, and burst into tears. He looks like his grandfather, she said, her voice breaking. She turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something other than skepticism in her eyes. You've given my son something I didn't think he'd ever have. Thank you. For what? For softening him, for making him human again. She touched my hand briefly. Welcome to the family, Emmeline. Truly. The transition wasn't seamless. There were still moments when I felt out of place in Philippos's world, when the weight of knowing what he did, what he was, pressed down on me. But there were more moments when I felt exactly where I belonged. Like the night Aaron climbed into bed with us because she'd had a nightmare, and Philippos held her while she fell back asleep, his hand reaching for mine over her small body. Like the afternoon I found him in the nursery, just watching Alexandros sleep, his expression soft with wonder. Like the family dinner where his brothers teased him about being domesticated, and he'd simply smiled and said, "Best thing that ever happened to me." 6 months after Alexandros was born, we had a second wedding ceremony. Not the quick, necessary one from before, but a celebration. Aaron was flower girl, walking down the aisle with serious concentration. Alexandros slept in his grandmother's arms through the entire thing, and when Philippos and I exchanged vows, real ones this time, not contractual obligations, I meant every word. I, Emmeline, take you, Philippos, to be my husband, to love in light and shadow, to trust with my life and the lives of our children, to build a family with, a legacy with, a future with, for as long as we both live. I, Philippos, take you, Emmeline, to be my wife, my partner, my heart. I promise to protect you and cherish you, to honor the trust you've placed in me, to be a father worthy of our children and a husband worthy of you, in this life and whatever comes after. Later, at the reception, I watched Aaron dance with Philippos's youngest brother, while Philippos held Alexandros and spoke with his business associates. Our strange, complicated, beautiful family. You look happy, Katerina said, appearing beside me. I am. Even knowing what he is, what this life means. Especially knowing, I said, because I know all of him, not just the parts he shows the world, and I love all of him anyway. She nodded slowly. That's what family means in our world. Loving despite the darkness, maybe because of it. She touched my shoulder. You're stronger than I gave you credit for, Emmeline. You'll be a good matriarch when the time comes. Matriarch. The word should have terrified me, Instead, it felt right. That night, after Aaron and Alexandros were asleep, Filipos and I stood on our bedroom balcony, looking out over the city. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "The contract? The way this all started?" "No. Do you?" "Never." He pulled me close. "You came into my life running from danger. I never imagined you'd run straight into my arms and make me better for it. I didn't make you better. I just made you want to be better." "Same thing." He kissed me softly. "Thank you, Emmeline, for choosing this, for choosing me, for giving me a family I didn't know I needed. Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible, for protecting us when we had no one, for loving Erin like she's yours. She is mine. You all are." His hand rested on my stomach, where another small life was just beginning to grow, a fact I'd discovered just that morning and hadn't told him yet. "Filipos?" "About that. About being yours." I covered his hand with mine. "The family's about to get a little bigger." He went very still. "You're pregnant. Again. I know it's soon, but..." He spun me around and kissed me breathless, joy radiating from every line of his body. When he finally pulled back, he was grinning like a fool. "How many?" he asked. "How many children are we going to have?" "I don't know. How many do you want?" "As many as you'll give me. A house full. A legacy built not on fear, but on love." He sobered slightly. "I know what I am, Emmeline. I know the world I operate in. But with you, with our children, I want to build something better. Not just an empire of power, but a family of love. Is that possible?" "With you?" I touched his face. "Anything is possible." And I believed it, because we'd started with a contract and built a kingdom. Started with necessity and found love. Started as strangers and became family. The world would always know Filipos Marcoux as a dangerous man. A man to be feared and respected in equal measure. But I knew him as something more. A man who checked on nightmares and framed children's drawings. Who held his son with reverent care and looked at his wife like she'd hung the stars. Who'd taken a housekeeper running from danger and given her a castle to call home. Was it a perfect fairy tale? No. We were both too complicated, too scarred, too aware of the darkness in the world for that. But it was ours. Our story. Our family. Our love built in shadows and brought into light. And that was more than enough. That was everything.